Pictures of you, pictures of me, hung upon your wall for the world to see. Pictures of you, pictures of me, remind us all of what we could have been. Pictures of you, pictures of me, hung upon your...
Relive every moment true to life with True Capture technology, only from Canon.
For the one and only trip I ever did with my dad as a young kid, and so it's quite special to me in that regard, because outback New South Wales, I guess, is somewhere that I've kind of come to and visited for a whole range of reasons, but it's also been quite a strong memorial place for me in a lot of sense. I'd like to also pick up from what Laurie this morning and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of here, of this area that I come and visit. I speak on, and also like to acknowledge the wisdom in the room, and the expertise and the experience in the room, and the previous speakers. It's quite kind of like shakes you around a little bit when you see what's going on around the place, and it's kind of hard-hitting, bottom line stuff that they talked about. So I'm going to take it on a little bit of a different tact. I'm going to have a bit of an experiential bent to mine. It's going to be a little bit more of a learning-based focus, and it is going to be focused around the tour guide. And the main statement I'm giving out to you is that it's everyone working in the tourism industry is a tour guide. And the take I'm going to take, the perspective I'm going to come from, is that really what we're about at the end of the day is, or one of the key elements we're about, is facilitating visitor experiences for our visitors. That's essentially it. We're facilitating this awesome experience for people, so they go away and they've just had it. They've had that wonderful time. Like I said, the first time I've come to Broken Hill, it's quite special. First time with my dad, first ever trip I've ever did. And I've got a lot of really special memories, something like 30 years later. And that's what a tour guide does, pretty much. That's what they're about. They're about facilitating experiences for visitors. I'm going to take, because like a tour guide, if anyone here works as a tour guide, I know with the guys from Black Opal, they do kind of similar type work. I know some people around do tour guiding work. I guess I want to park the traditional notion of what a tour guide is, and that is someone at the front here, and there's the group, and here it's me, and I give this historical narrative to this group, this historical commentary to the group, and I'm going to park that because to me, my notion of a tour guide is where I'm coming from, which is that more interpretive perspective, where I'm actually in the same space as my visitor. Because me, if I'm a guide and I'm thinking about what I did last night, I might have been making honking noises last night through Tom's presentation, and there's the group, then I'm in a separate space to the group. And it's hard for me to be in the moment with the group and touch base with the experience they're experiencing. Does that make sense? The interpretive guide is in the same space and working with them together and being part of that experience. And that's a slightly different take, and that's the kind of the take I want to go with this perspective of a tour guide. So, that'd be great. Lovely, thank you. Okay, sure. That'll be good. Ooh. Does everyone know this song? Beautiful, lovely. Pause. So I'm going to ask you, what I'm going to do during this session is I'm going to try to make it as relevant for you as possible. Yeah. And one of the ways is I'm going to pause maybe twice, definitely once, maybe twice. At the end of that, I'm going to play that song, and that song's the cue to come back and pull focus back to the group. Last person standing, of course, does that song, the chicken dance song, the lovely old chicken dance song, which I reckon's a beauty. I've got two young kids, and I've learned to enjoy kids' music. It's just sensational doing a chicken dance song with a little 2-year-old. They teach you some really awesome, interesting moves. I might share it with you. So what I'd like to do for the first activity now is, and we'll pull back to this activity a bit later on, I'm going to ask you very simply to get up and speed date in about a minute. So it means getting up off your chairs, mixing around the room. You've got a minute. That chicken dance song is going to come on at 10 seconds to go. Listen out for it. We're going to slowly crank the volume. The last person sitting does that slight little kind of chicken dance kind of move. And what I want you to do is, one task I'm going to ask you to bring out of this activity is remember the person's name. So obviously introduce yourself, say something very quickly because it's a speed dating activity for a minute, but remember their name if you can. All right, you've got a minute, the room is yours, go for it. Okay. Alrighty, you've got 10 seconds to go. 10 seconds to go. What's up, man? Seconds. You want to start finding your seat unless you want to do the chicken dance. Alright, take a walk. I'll take down the lovely. Alright. Not too bad. Ooh, a couple of contenders there. Excellent. Lovely. All right, so not too bad, we did well. I want you to hold on to that activity without meeting names because we're going to come back to it in a little while. So onto a couple of slides that I want to share with you. Who is a tour guide? Person who guides groups or individual visitors around the buildings, sites and landscapes of the city or region to interpret an inspiring or entertaining manner the cultural and natural heritage and environment. You could probably go to 10 different sources and have different perspectives on what a tour guide is. I pulled this up from some work from Betty Weiler and Rosie Black. You want me to move?
No, you're fine.
Lovely. Who are recognised, I guess, people, researchers in the field of guiding. So that's what a tour guide is. So what is interpretation, given that we're going down an interpretive approach to guiding? Wow. Yep, thanks. Excellent. So interpretation is, if you haven't come across it before, it's got some origins back in the US and before that even in the UK and other areas of the world, and even China. Most people think the first national park was actually in the US. It was actually in Mongolia. It was the first national park. But a lot of the interpret movement came out of national parks. And essentially what it's about is about focusing on what makes something special. That's essentially what an interpretive approach is about. And it's like some of the quotes up there, it's got to come from the heart, it's got to have a bit of creativity about it, a bit of imagination about it, and it also has to reveal meaning and insight. And that's where we divorce from the traditional guide, where the guide just provides information. We don't engage as visitors with information, we engage with ideas, opinions, perspectives, big ideas, messages. That's what we engage in. So we've got to work beyond just facts. And that's what interpretation does. It reveals meaning through these other ways. Still not done. I'll just speak to you, eh? You just do it. Thanks, mate. I'll just need that for the switching on and off. And so when we're adopting an approach, it's like I was saying, it's about facilitating an interpretive experience. So next one, mate. Interpretation, it's about people. And I guess the tourism industry is pretty much about people as well. It's also about your passion and where you're coming from. And if you're not passionate about what you do, then obviously it's the wrong game for you. You can only wear a mask for so long in this industry and then it's going to slip. You know, cricks are going to appear, etc. You just can't, I believe, and I've been in the game for, 30 odd years now, and it has to be, it's working, sweet, thanks mate. It has to be something that is part of you, an extension of you. You can't force people into the industry. Yeah. In the same time, you can't force visitors to do a particular experience. Most of the time, they're voluntary. They're coming along. They're willing. They're in their leisure time. So, in that respect, we've got to come from that space as well. And it's about place. It has to pull back to place and what's significant to place as well. The stories come from place. Yeah. And this is I guess where I like to play in this space here, that it has to be relevant to you, obviously, that passion side of it, the visitor and place, and the relationships between these. Because like, let's say I'm out there and I'm working as a guide somewhere or an interpretive officer somewhere, and I've got something that I'm really passionate about, but it's not relevant to people, and it's relevant to place, but then why are the people there? I should really go out there at night time by myself, seriously. Likewise, if it's passionate and it's something relevant to the visitors, and relevant to place, but I'm not passionate about it, then why am I there? And that's one of the research projects for me this year, is to look at how digital media, how we can work with digital media to complement what we call face-to-face interpretation, the guiding sphere. Because if the guiding sphere slips, digital media is becoming so sophisticated that we've got this competitive force coming through. We've got to be ahead of the game in that respect, and that's one of my research projects. And obviously it has to pull back to place, because if I'm talking to visitors and they're getting on and we're getting on, but it's not related to place, well then just go and pick a venue somewhere and do it there. And that's again, so I'm always asking myself this question when I'm developing experiences, how does it relate to those three and the relationships between them? And also, the other question for me is, traditionally, guys, let's say that's the past back here. We've heard all about how important the past is and research and doing all that work. And we get up to that point of contact, which is about here. We say, hello, welcome, you're going to be with us for about 2 or 3 hours. Awesome, lovely. Yeah. 2 or 3 hours later, see you later, mate, have a great time. Awesome, all the rest of it. And there's the post experience. A lot of the time, traditionally, this is where the guide focused, pre and post. Like, so not pre-post, but you've got the pre, you've got the post, but that period of contact. And again, that's not good enough anymore. We need to work in this space to get to understand the visitor. And I guess I learned this quite early in the game when working as the visitor centres, in the visitor centres around the place. Someone would come in and say, listen mate, want some information, what can I do around here? And I just download them with the maps and the booklets and this and that and everything else. And it wasn't until later that I asked one simple little question. I said, look, what are you interested in? And all of a sudden I had a focus, and it's like, well then how much time do you have? And I had another focus. And so just by asking those simple questions, I learned how to make it as relevant for them as possible versus trying to just download them with information. And I think that's one of the key questions, again, getting back to this, is how do we make it relevant to people? It has to be. And then obviously there's that period of contact, and a lot of time we don't spend much time in this start period. And that's really important, it sets the tone. And I'll give you an example of this. There's a group activity, it's a group participation activity. Some of you have no doubt experienced this in the past. I just want to ask you what cows drink. They generally drink what? They drink water, don't they? Yeah? Do you agree? They drink water? An adult cow, I'm talking about, not a baby cow. An adult cow, they drink water. Sweet? Alright, so can you all say as a group, water? Cows drink what? Water. Lovely. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 words. And at the end of that, I'm going to ask you the question what cows drink. As a group, I want you to say what they drink, which we all know to be water, okay? So here we go. One word is silk. As a group, say it, silk. Next word, silk. Third word, silk. Fourth word is silk. Fifth word is silk. What do cows drink? Water. Lovely. Cool. Awesome. If I didn't prime you, and what I call prime you, and I just did that activity, and I've done this with a number of groups, and just said the silk, 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 silk. Most people, what I found, the majority say milk at the end of it. But I primed you first, I got you going, I got you involved, got you, I guess, connected with water first, and we came up with that difference. And that's where the start's really important. We prime people to the experience. As much as our promotional material and our marketing does back here. And then obviously post. So bye. Well, where's the contact beyond that point? What are you doing beyond this point to allow that relationship to continue? And media provides that. Digital media provides so many opportunities now through Facebook and social platforms that we've just heard about through the morning. So that's where, whilst that's a simple model, once we start playing with it, we start to get some really good observations going. So this is a little technique I'm going to introduce you to. It's called the gulp technique. Okay, so I'm just going to park that for a sec. Can I have anyone in the room, call out a phone number, please? A phone number. Anyone? Yes?
88882389.
Could I get you to stand up so everyone can hear it?
Oh, wait, area code 88882389.
So just 8 digits. We'll do without the area code.
Oh, I got it.
No, please.
Damn.
Yes. So nice and slow so everyone can hear it.
Without that 08?
Without the area code.
80882389.
Beautiful. Have a seat. Lovely. So let's see if we can remember that number in a sec. So the gulp technique is a way of remembering people's names. And that's why I did that activity at the start of what we did. Generally what happens is at the start period, back here, we meet people and we forget their names. It'd be nice to be able to say at that end, hey, listen, great for coming. Look, like DJ was awesome and Tom was great, lovely kind of engaging with you, etc. And a lot of times when you meet people, they say, look, I remember the person's face, I don't remember their name. The reason why is we usually only interact with that name once, but we might spend time with the face for a lot longer, if that makes sense. Yeah? So what this proposes to do is actually stretch that period of contact, and that's what the gulp technique does. Does anyone remember what the number was? Okay, can someone call it out?
80882389. Correct.
Yep, lovely. Did anyone else get it? A couple of people? Awesome. Okay. This time, we're going to do someone else, another number, 8 digits, another number. Anyone? So, again, upstanding, we've got a bit of rain on the roof, so...
0874609.
Alright, so let's go... Can I have one of your whiteboard markers? Just for that, thanks, man. Okay. So can you call that number out again for us?
8087.
I need the other one. I need another one, Laurie. Oh no, I've got a black one here, mate. So 80.
87.
Yep.
46.
Yep.
09. No one ring it.
Cool. Awesome. Now I want everyone to imagine they've got a huge keypad in front of them. Everyone imagine you've got a huge keypad or a big phone if you use your thumbs, doesn't really matter how. And I want you to punch in that number imaginarily into that keypad. Okay, so you're going to punch in 808-74609. Make sure you do the movements on the pad. Okay, well you can do it kind of in your head as well, but it's better if you do it with your fingers. Okay? Lovely. Now the gold technique is you get the person's name, we just mentioned that. We use a memory aid. So some kind of memory aid to help remember that person's name. We make a link between the name and the memory aid and we practice and picture it. And so some examples might be, let's say I meet Paul. Meet Paul. Paul rhymes with ball. So that's how I associate Paul with ball. He might have a roundish head, roundish face, round his eyes. So I extend that feature if you like. Sorry? Then you call him ball. Ah, yes. But hopefully, yes. Well, that, I mean, you ask him if he doesn't mind being called. Yes, yes. Well, and I guess the same with Chain and Jane and all these. If you got, there's other ways around that, but I mean, he might enjoy it. Maybe link to a physical feature. Jane might be wearing a chain, really nice chain. So that's how you remember Jane. Remembering that if you meet Jane months later, she might not be having that chain. So you might have to visualise that imprint in her chest, if you like. Maybe you could make a little bit of a pirouette out of it. Connected to a familiar person, like you meet Matt. Matt's like your childhood mate, if you like. Use the first letter of their name. You meet Alan, quite athletic. It looks like he plays the best sport of all. That's rugby league, not AFL. From a Sydney boy, born and bred in Sydney town. So, and then link to a physical feature, like say for example Grant, who's quite kind of strong looking. So there's ways we can play with it, and all we're asking you to do is when we meet that person, we just spend that little bit of 1 or 2 seconds trying this out. And generally what's going to happen is you're going to remember people's names in far more occasions than what you would normally. And I think in the tourism industry that's quite important. Yeah? As a little tip to help you remember this, open ask an ended question once you meet them. Because if you say, oh, how you going, mate? My name's John. Your name is, let's say that let's say it is Paul Ball. That might be their surname. Who knows? So Paul. So you meet Paul, and you go, Paul, I say you're enjoying yourself, and Paul goes, oh yeah. Then you've got to start thinking about other questions. Versus, hey Paul, lovely to meet you. My name's John. So what brings you here? And in that response, you've got a little bit extra time to start working this. That little extra, all you need is a second or two. It's not long. Once you get a handle on this, you start picturing people. And picturing, if I ask you to imagine a scene, you're generally going to go to pictures in your mind, in your imagination. And that's what we engage with here. So now, what I'm going to ask you to do is, who remembers that phone number now? More people remember it? How many people remember the phone number now? The one just now that we just did. So more people remember it. And how did you remember it? Just call a hands. How did you remember it?
Wrote it down.
You nice, lovely. I thought you'd make a video of it, given you love videos and things. But you had to write it down. It's cool. How else do you remember it? You dialed it, so that worked for you? Others? Visualised it, okay. So what did I do the first time? I asked the number, and it was just an auditory way of engaging that information. That time what I've done is I've asked the number, it's auditory, it's visual, okay, it's also kinesthetic, and it's very imaginative. You wrote it down, awesome. And that was, what we're doing is, it's a very simple, there's many learning models out there. That's a very simple one called VAK, which is visual, auditory, kinesthetic. What we do as guys is we try and engage more than just that auditory, traditional guiding sense. We engage all the senses, we engage our imagination, we make it a holistic experience. That's what we aim to do as well. And I'll use that phone number example as a way of doing that, to layer, if you like, that idea with hopefully a technique for you about remembering people's names, but also demonstrating how by engaging more of our senses we can actually remember things and engage in that experience more. Now another thing that interpreters do, and an interpretive approach does, is they look for the point to the story. Yeah, they look for the story. They look for that key idea. And I was doing some work up in Queensland, and there's a rock museum up there that's got some rocks. And they've got some rocks, they've got some rocks, and they've got some rocks. If you can't see that, that's 1, 2, 3 dioramas, horizontal-based dioramas with all those walls, and that's only one room of 3 that have that many rocks. That's a lot of rocks.
Are they different?
Hey?
Are they all different?
Oh, yeah, they look different. Yeah, different colours, different shapes, different surfaces, etc. I mean, beautiful rocks. Absolutely gorgeous. The aesthetics in the rocks was terrific. The only thing with me is when I walked out of there, I went, yeah, that was lovely, but so what? You know, what do you want me to gain from this experience? What's the story you want me to get out of the experience? And that's what interpreters do. They would walk into there and go, yeah, look, you've got this amazing resource here, but how are you going to pull focus for people into that resource? And that's where storytelling does. I mean, there's another place out at, on the Western Slopes that have got an awesome museum that's got irons, like rooms of irons, these kind of irons. I mean, I love ironing, it's very meditative, but it's just the number of irons that are in there is just phenomenal. And again, what was the point? So what we try and do as interpreters, we look for what's relevant and what's not relevant. Yeah? And this is what we call thematic-based interpretation. So what I've got coming up is I've got a whole series of dots coming up, and little smileys. I made them into little smileys for you. I want you to just to count the number of dots that are up on the page, if you could. All right, I'll get out of the way so you can do it. Just count the number of dots that are up on the page. Beautiful. Does everyone have an idea how many dots are up there?
24.
24. Any other takers? 18, 16. Oh, sorry, 32. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to give you another go. Again, same number of dots. I'm going to flip over the first one to the second one because I didn't want you guys to cheat. So there's... Okay, how many dots? How many say 16? All right. I gave you even less time the second time for the same number of dots, but you got the dots. Yeah, generally there was more consistency in what you remembered the second time round. And all I did, same dots, same smileys, all the rest of it, same canvas, if you like, that I used. And all I did was order it. I gave it some kind of clustering, and that's what we do as interpreters. We look for those kind of key ideas, and then we cluster information around the key idea. Because generally what we find is people don't remember a string of facts, they remember the key ideas, and that's what gives you the basis for the story. You know, like someone goes, oh mate, I saw a great movie the other night, and they're generally not going to tell you everything that the person did, what shoes they were wearing, and coloured pants and all the rest, but they'll give you the gist of the story.
In actual fact, there's more dots there because each had eyes.
Sorry?
Each had eyes, so there's more dots there, what you're saying.
Ah, nice. Yeah, I suppose, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's the first time I've been picked up on that one, thank you. But I've never used smileys before, so I'm going to have to be careful next time. Thank you. So what would that make us? So if there's 18 dots multiplied by 2, that's 36. 36 plus 18 is what, 60, 50, 44? 54. 44. Anyway, it's more than 16. Yeah, thanks. What's that? Rock, sand, mud, biscuit, lunar landscape, rider wheat, yeah, one of my favourite. Great foods when you're motorbike riding, you just, yep.
Actually the track on which 14 dogs, 7 sheep and 8 cattle have actually walked.
I want to come on one of your tours. Just,
Most welcome.
yeah, awesome. So yeah, what it is, once I pull back a little bit more, you gave a little bit more context to it, a bit more context, a bit more context, a bit more context. It's actually part of the Justice and Police Museum in Sydney near the Rocks. And when I'm out with TAFE students out there, and I say, look, let's look at some of the stories in the landscape. And generally they'll pull to the dominant stories in the landscape, the dominant features, and that's where they'll draw a story from. And that activity I do is say, what about the stories of the sandstone? What about the stories of the sand? What about other things that are happening that we can actually work with? And an example of this, again, when I was working up in Queensland was, I landed in this town, they picked me up, and we drove probably about 2.5 hours out to what was going to be their premium tourism attraction to try and pull people to the area. And I got there and I went, yeah, mate, it's not bad, but I just can't see tourists driving 2.5 hours to see this. I can't. And so then we drove back to the town where I was staying, And on the way back in, about 15 minutes out of town, they started kind of introducing me to the industry, the local industry, what they were up to, what the town was doing. And mate, it was fascinating. What that town was up to and how they lived, how they survived, how they worked. It was a sugarcane-based town. It was just incredible. And the mills. I said, guys, look, why do you want to go 2.5 hours out there to develop a tourism activity when you've got this awesome tourism experience based in your town? And that's what they ended up developing on. Because I guess they just didn't see it, so to speak, so it's commonplace for them. But for me, for an out-of-towner, for people passing through, that was a pull factor, because no one else was doing it. How does the town actually work? And it's fascinating, like watching the cane fires and watching a sugar mill and how it goes from sugar cane to sugar and all that journey. And yeah, the mayor ended up running those tours. So it just worked just by looking local. And I think that's an example, if you like, of where we look for stories sometimes. Just been having a bit of, I guess a little bit of creativity, a bit of left field thinking.
The monkey business illusion.
I just want to, has anyone seen that, the monkey business illusion? No? Okay, so what it is, it's going to go for about 2.5 minutes. It's based around this thing of seeing things in the landscape and what we look at and what we miss sometimes when we're looking somewhere, and sometimes we've got to step back. And I'll give you some ways of doing that in a sec. So go through it. If you have seen it before, it's slightly different to the original in there's a second part to it. Okay? It only goes about 2 minutes.
Please, for the owner of the blue ute parked in the back lane, registration number EYN141, please move it because it's locking a driver.
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events. And that's the monkey business illusion. Learn more about this illusion and the original gorilla experiment at theinvisiblegorilla.com.
Okay. Anyone see the gorilla the first time? Few? So probably what they say, about half saw it. And then did you see the curtains? Because when I saw that, I was looking for the gorilla, I saw it. I didn't see the player leaving, and I didn't see the curtain changing colour. And sometimes that's the thing, when something's so dominant and pulls focus, you just got to relax focus, pull back and see what else is out there as well, what other opportunities are out there as well. And that's, I guess, where I'm going to leave you is what are some of the ways of doing that? I guess one of the ways is kind of just to have a bit of fun, relax a little bit, and try and do things the way you don't normally do. We're creatures of habit. Human beings are creatures of habit. And again, it's the last kind of audience participation for you, but I'm just going to ask you, because a few people are already crossing their arms, I'm just going to ask you to unopen your arms if they're already crossed, and I'm just going to ask you now to cross your arms as you normally would do it. Then I'm going to ask you to uncross them and cross them the other way. And generally what's going to happen is we're going to have to think about it, and we might end up being a bit dyslexically contorted, if you like, yes? And that's because it's easier for us to do it this way. It's easier for us to do habit. As soon as we change habit, we've got to think about it, and we've got a bit more energy, but that's what we've got to invest. Write your name with your non-dominant hand. Write your name with your non-dominant hand. And again, you're generally going to find it's a little bit harder. Yeah? I mean, I broke, about 5 years ago now, I broke my shoulder playing footy. and I had to write from the left hand. And it was just amazing in that I started seeing things in different ways. I really started engaging with things in different ways because I started accessing different parts of my mind. And I've been doing research since then, and there's a concept out now called neuroplasticity, which looks at the way the mind changes based on the way we behave in an environment. So if we do something different, things are going to change neurologically as well. And this is where comedians come in. Comedians got this amazing ability to kind of look at things in new and different ways, the everyday, if you like. So I want to share this with you.
Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Hotline. If you are obsessive compulsive, press 1 repeatedly. If you are codependent, ask someone to press 2 for you. If you have multiple personalities, press 3, 4, 5 and 6. If you are paranoid, we know what you are and what you want. Stay on the line and we'll trace your call. If you're delusional, press 7 and your call will be transferred to the mothership. If you are schizophrenic, listen carefully and a small voice will tell you which number to press. If you're depressive, it doesn't matter which number you press, no one will answer you. If you're dyslexic, press 69696969. If you have a nervous disorder, please fidget with the hash key until the beep. After the beep, please wait for the beep. If you have a short-term memory loss, please try your call again later. And if you have low self-esteem, hang up. All our operators are too busy.
Nice, the everyday, and they just take a nice, kind of interesting, fun way around it. So, that was actually up in that Queensland town I was working in. It was an awesome point of entry for a town, and there it was great. So I want to leave you with a 1-minute activity. I was saying at the start to try and make this as relevant to you as possible. It's a slight different tack to where the other guys came from this morning. And for the minute, I'm just going to ask you once again to get up and meet someone. And is there anything that I shared with you over the last 40-odd minutes or so that you believe is relevant to what you do in the tourism industry? And in that regard, is there anything where you believe there's some relevance to your work as a tour guide as well? So I'm going to leave you for about a minute. The Chicken Dance song will come on at a minute, and then we'll wrap up this session. So the space is yours once again. Meet someone, meet people, and just have a chat and see how what I've shared with you can be relevant to you beyond the guiding industry. Actually, what I'm going to ask you to do is a bit of a challenge. Just stay standing, no need to go sitting down. Oh, it is? Alright, so can I just hear from a couple of people, were there any takeaways from the session related to your work, given that I'm assuming not everyone here is a tour guide?
Well, actually, probably for the Railway Museum, we are actually in the process of putting more interpretive science in there, but also, for the people. It is very relevant. We have the old and the new. We have the old that desperately needs more interpretation, and then we've got a new migrant museum that is completely interpretive. So, but I found it most enjoyable and
Thanks. Okay, so it's relevant. Anyone else? Any other takeaways?
Yeah, I spent 20 years as a tour director for a UK company, and what you're saying is right, and attitude with humour and things like that. It's just be yourself.
Yeah, lovely. Be yourself. Definitely. Good one. All right, so last one.
I just found the whole thing to be a wonderful affirmation of what we do.
Yeah.
And I guess I thought that, and my confusion is with guides, that it's somebody who owns a tour company and is doing guides, because I don't, I'm not a guide for the rest of the community, but my performance is exactly what you say.
And what you, I'm glad you said that, Doug, because that's where I wanted to finish this, is that, and that's one of the challenges we face from the interpretive industry, in that the traditional mode of a guide, you know, it has a place, if you like, but I believe more what we do is that interpretive experience. Yeah? And whilst it's normally associated with the guiding industry, where I want to leave you with is that it's also relevant to all of us in terms of what we do in the tourism industry, that interpretive approach. And it is about us, it's about where we come from, and it's about that relevance to the place and to the visitor. So, can I leave one little thing? Two little things. You cannot make someone love you. All you can do is be someone who can be loved, and the rest is up to them. That's one perspective. Another perspective is you cannot make someone love you. All you can do is stalk them, hope they panic, and then give in. So, enjoy the different perspectives of life.